you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about?
Shannon had doctors take him off life support 2 days later. Friends still question the circumstances around his death.
They're rude, they're obnoxious, they're not fun to be around, and then they're racist.
I spoke with his friend Kent Emmons, who Gary named an executor of his estate in his will. Do you believe in your heart that Gary died from an accidental fall?
No.
Gary Coleman, the famous actor from the TV show Diff'rent Strokes, passed away 14 years ago. Recently, his family confirmed some long-running rumors. What were these rumors? Why have they decided to speak out now?
Well, as of this morning.
Do we know if he left a will or not?
Well, that's a real bone of contention right now. There's some reporting out there that he left a will in which he does not name Shannon.
What truth has finally been revealed about Gary's life and death? In this video, we'll explore what the family shared and clear up some of the confusion surrounding his passing.
Where if someone had told me that my life would have been like this early enough where I could have got out.
Coleman's small stature and charming personality made him perfect for Hollywood. And in 1978, at age 10, he became the star of the hit sitcom Diff'rent Strokes.
Helmet, soldier!
Born in Zion, Illinois, on February 8, 1968, he was adopted by W.G. Coleman, a forklift operator, and Edmonia Sue, a nurse practitioner. Due to focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, a kidney disease, and the corticosteroids and other medications used to treat it, his growth was limited. Around the age of 9, Coleman was discovered by a talent scout for the Norman Lear Agency, who was looking for actors to star in a revival of the classic Little Rascals comedy series. The project didn't take off, but Coleman's small stature proved to be an asset in other productions, as he was cast to play precocious characters that were nearly half his age. The actor's big break came in 1978, when he was cast to play the character Arnold Jackson on a new sitcom called Diff'rent Strokes.
5 years old, I'm a world-renowned celebrity. There's no place I can go where no one does it.
Coleman played an African-American orphan who was taken in by a wealthy white benefactor and his daughter. The series was a hit, and so were Coleman and his co-stars, Dana Plato and Todd Bridges. His common exclamation on the show, "What you talking about, Willis?" also became a pop culture catchphrase. As a result of his television success, Coleman was able to spin his stardom into a film career. By age 5, he had received his first kidney transplant. After getting a second one in 1984 and facing another operation in 1986, Coleman opted for dialysis 4 times daily instead. Through it all, the drugs given to manage his condition resulted in a suppressed growth phase. By age 14, Coleman knew he wouldn't grow beyond 4 feet 8 inches. One episode of the series was even devoted to his character coming to grips with the same affliction.
I love the work. I truly love making people laugh.
As he neared adulthood, a teenage Coleman began to grow very weary of playing an adolescent Arnold. For the last season, he successfully petitioned the writers to place Arnold in high school in order to feed more mature plots like dating and driving, with less jumping into Mr. Drummond's lap. He also convinced NBC to give him a dramatic role in 1985 as the lead in a TV movie, Playing with Fire, about a child arsonist who wants to set the family dog ablaze.
Next Sunday, Gary Coleman as you've never seen him before. He's cheered your hearts. Now he's going to touch your hearts in a shocking NBC World movie premiere about a young boy's desperate plea for love.
Like his very special episodes, it ends with a strong message for would-be firebugs: get therapy. But a few years before the sitcom ended, Coleman began to get restless. "I got tired of doing the show. I didn't want to do it anymore. But there was nothing I could do about that because the contract was already signed. So I was a little bitter about that because I didn't want to be there. The character wasn't growing. He wasn't interesting to me anymore. So when it got canceled, I was enormously thrilled and was very much looking forward to starting the rest of my life." Unfortunately, no longer a child, he found it difficult to get roles apart from a few guest appearances in TV series, including the last episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, in which he and Bane played Arnold and Mr. Drummond again. At one point, after Arnold makes a crack, Mr. D retorts, Those remarks were much funnier when you were a child. Coleman did appear in a number of feature films, most of which were abysmal, including a blaxploitation parody called Shafted, and an American Carol, David Zucker's screamingly unfunny satire on documentary filmmaker Michael Moore.
What are you doing, Arnold?
Oh, nothing.
Despite being the main attraction of Strokes, Coleman was paid a fairly paltry $1,800 per episode when the show debuted. His parents successfully argued for a raise to $30,000 per episode. By 1981, the promise of lucrative syndication money led to another request. This time, the protracted contract negotiations had Coleman sitting on the sidelines for the first episodes of the fourth season. His salary was eventually increased to $70,000 per episode, making him NBC's highest-paid comedic actor for a period of time. At the age of 10, Coleman formed his own company, Gary Coleman Productions, to handle his career. His parents became his full-time managers, writing themselves into the contract as their son's paid employees. When Coleman's acting career slowed drastically after the cancellation of Diff'rent Strokes in 1986, the child star turned to his trust fund, which was estimated to hold nearly $18 million. Coleman, nearly 18 years old at the time, discovered only $220,000. The discovery resulted in a tangled lawsuit against his parents and his agent for misappropriation of his trust fund.
But what happened with Gary was they're able to take that money, move it from a trust to...
Coleman struggled with depression after the settlement, later admitting that he attempted suicide several times. The former star went into semi-retirement, bouncing from Colorado and then to Arizona.
Able to take that money, move it from a trust to whatever they wanted to. They thought that they applied to the court to move that money from the trust to... You can make it to where you can make more interest and more money. You can move it to another thing. By what they moved it to, which is Orion Pictures, and a few other places that, he never got any money.
When he couldn't find acting work, Coleman took on work as a security guard. Money became tight, and Coleman filed for bankruptcy in 1999. He continued to make cameos in TV shows, including Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Married with Children, and The Keenan Ivory Wayans Show. In the years that followed, he would have more than 20 run-ins with law enforcement.
5 years old. I'm a world-renowned celebrity. There's no place I can go where no one does.
In 1998, while Coleman was employed as a security guard in California, one day while he was shopping at a mall for a bulletproof vest, a fan named Tracy Fields, a bus driver from Los Angeles, recognized him. She remembered Coleman from his acting days and asked him for an autograph. Coleman refused her request, and this didn't sit well with Fields. They argued, and Fields reportedly mocked Coleman, saying negative things about his career. According to Coleman, Fields would not leave him alone and was making him feel threatened. Eventually, he lost his temper and hit her in the face several times. This happened right in front of other shoppers who saw the incident. Coleman was arrested and later defended himself by saying he was scared of Fields. In the end, he pleaded no contest to assault. Coleman did not serve jail time, but he had to pay for Fields' hospital bills and take anger management classes.
You idiots! You boneheaded idiots!
In July 2007, Coleman was again arrested, this time for disorderly conduct, when a heated argument with his girlfriend, actress Shannon Price, got out of control. Despite their difficulties, the couple wed secretly in August of that same year. But by 2008, they were already having marital problems. They headed to TV's divorce court to settle their issues, airing their grievances for rapt audiences in May of 2008. The couple would stay together and, a year later, they were again embroiled in a domestic dispute. Both parties were cited for disorderly conduct, but these conflicts with the law didn't resonate with Coleman, and in 2010 he was charged with domestic violence again and placed in jail overnight. Further compounding Coleman's troubled reputation, SNL star Molly Shannon later opened up on The Howard Stern Show in 2022 and accused him of sexual harassment. In 2008, Coleman faced yet another conflict, this time with a young man named Colt Rushton at a bowling alley in Payson, Utah. Rushton, who was 24 at the time, tried to take a photo of Coleman without his permission. Coleman became upset and the two argued. The confrontation didn't end there. As Coleman left the bowling alley and got into his truck, he backed up his vehicle and accidentally hit Rushton, injuring his knee. Rushton was taken to a local hospital where he was treated for minor injuries. Coleman ended up pleading no contest to disorderly conduct and reckless driving and was fined $100. Later, he also settled a civil lawsuit over the incident, although the details of that settlement were not made public.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about?
Gary was known for his catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis?" A line he said many times on the show. But Coleman found it hard to escape his childhood fame. The pressure of being remembered for one role, along with constant requests to repeat his famous line, made him unhappy. Like many child actors, he was stuck in the role people knew him for, even though he wanted to move on. He didn't want to be seen as just the little kid who said, "What you talking about, Willis?" all the time. But for fans, it was the most memorable part of his character, and people continued to ask him to say it long after Diff'rent Strokes ended.
Oh, yeah, life ain't just comic strips, you know?
In 2004, Coleman joined the reality show The Surreal Life, where former celebrities lived together in one house. One of his fellow cast members, Vanilla Ice, a famous rapper, kept pestering him to say his old line. Ron Jeremy, another reality star and friend of Coleman, explained how much this annoyed Gary. According to Jeremy, Coleman was so upset when Vanilla Ice kept asking him to repeat, "What you talking about, Willis?" Jeremy said Coleman wanted to leave his past behind, and he hated being forced to relive it.
They're rude, they're obnoxious, they're not fun to be around, and then they're racist.
It wasn't just the catchphrase that upset Coleman. Vanilla Ice took things even further, picking up Gary and making jokes about putting him in a deep fryer. This act, along with being teased about his height and famous line, became too much for Coleman. Feeling disrespected, he stormed off the set. Jeremy shared that Coleman was furious, saying things like, "I hate this guy, let go of me." Sadly, this was just one example of how Coleman struggled after his time on Diff'rent Strokes. As an adult, he dealt with financial problems. Coleman sometimes even had to take unusual steps to raise funds to pay his bills. In 1999, Coleman partnered with UGO Networks for an online auction titled Save Me, where he sold some of his belongings to raise money. The items included his couch, a small suit he called a tiny pimp suit, and a pair of gold Nike sneakers. He even sold an ice scraper with his autograph on it. These items brought in over $5,000, giving him some relief from his financial issues, at least for a little while. Unfortunately, Coleman's health problems continued. He needed heart surgery, but the details of the operation were kept private. After the surgery, Coleman developed pneumonia, a lung infection, which made his health even worse. In January 2010, he had a seizure, which is a sudden electrical disturbance in the brain that causes shaking and can be dangerous. Just a month later, in February, he had another seizure while on the set of The Insider, a TV talk show. Was Gary Coleman murdered by his wife?
On the stairs.
Her head is bloody. There's blood all over the floor. I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened. I just can't be here with the blood. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't.
It all literally came to an end. In 2010, Gary Coleman died after a serious fall at his home. But some of his friends think that it wasn't an accident. They suspect that his wife, Shannon Price, might have had something to do with it. Gary Coleman's fall happened on May 26, 2010. He collapsed at his home and suffered a brain bleed and later cardiac arrest. Some others thought Shannon Price had pushed him, but he had also been having seizures. He might have even had a seizure as he was walking down the stairs. Though he was awake after his fall and intracranial hemorrhage, he ultimately lost consciousness while at Utah Valley Regional Medical Center and was placed on life support.
Shannon had doctors take him off life support 2 days later. Friends still question the circumstances around his death.
He was only 42 years old and still dealing with health problems from his childhood. This wasn't his first health scare. He'd had many surgeries and was going through kidney dialysis, a treatment for kidney failure. On that day, he was reportedly preparing food for Price when he fell. He died in the hospital 2 days later. Many people found his fall suspicious. His close friend Dion Mial, who was also his business manager at one time, questioned how such a short man, Gary was only 4 feet 8 inches tall, could have fallen in a way that caused such serious injuries. Marital and others thought there were too many questions with no answers. Shannon Price, Gary's wife, quickly became the focus of these suspicions. She was with Gary when he fell, but told 911 that she couldn't help him because there was too much blood, and she didn't want to add stress to her own health issues. She said she was afraid she might have a seizure due to stress. In her call, Price said she didn't want to apply pressure to his head injury. Her tone sounded strange to some, as she seemed more focused on herself than on Gary's serious injury.
On the stairs.
Her head is bloody. There's blood all over the floor. I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened. I just can't be here with the blood. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't.
To make things even stranger, Price didn't ride with Gary in the ambulance to the hospital, which shocked his friends and fans. She was also the one who decided to turn off his life support just 2 days later. This was against Gary's own wishes, as he had reportedly asked to be kept alive for at least 2 weeks in case of a serious health problem. Gary's former girlfriend, Anna Gray, was upset by Price's actions and believed that they spoke volumes about her intentions. In May 2012, Judge James Taylor stated that while Price had indeed lived in Coleman's home after their marriage ended, their relationship at the time of his death failed to meet Utah's standard for a common-law marriage. The hospital later issued a statement confirming that Coleman had completed an advanced health care directive, granting Price permission to make medical decisions on his behalf. An investigation by Sandakan police was closed on October 5, 2010, after the medical examiner ruled Coleman's death accidental and no evidence of wrongdoing could be demonstrated. Price also sold a photo of Gary in his hospital bed shortly before he died. She claimed this was necessary, saying that people needed to see what he went through. Many people, however, thought it was extremely disrespectful, and Marital called it one of the most depraved acts he'd ever seen. Despite all these things that seem suspicious, there is no solid proof that Shannon Price did anything illegal. She insisted that she loved Gary and didn't hurt him. She said in the documentary, Gary, that she didn't touch him when he fell and that nothing happened. The police also ruled Gary's death as an accident and did not charge Price with any crime. Still, for those who knew Gary Coleman well, the situation raises many questions. Friends and fans wonder if Gary's tragic life was made even harder by those around him, especially his wife. In the end, it seems that we may never know the full truth.
I spoke with his friend Kent Emmons, who Gary named an executor of his estate in his will. Do you believe in your heart that Gary died from an accidental fall?
No.
Gary is now at peace, and his memory will be kept in the hearts of those who were entertained by him throughout the years. Coleman's manager, John Alcantar, shared in a statement. After Gary Coleman's death, there was a lot of confusion and drama over what would happen to his estate and how he would be remembered. Coleman passed away relatively broke. He had one major asset, a home in Utah, but reportedly owed $325,000 in mortgage payments. His financial situation made his remaining possessions valuable to those who thought they might inherit them. Unfortunately, figuring out who should inherit wasn't simple. At first, a funeral was scheduled for Coleman. However, his plans for a funeral became complicated, and the ceremony was first postponed and then canceled.
Shannon also told us that Gary Coleman did not want a funeral or even a ceremony. He wanted to be cremated, she said. There are still no plans for a memorial.
There was a big disagreement among the people who were close to him about who should make the decisions about his funeral and his remaining assets. His adoptive parents, his ex-wife Shannon Price, and a former business manager named Anna Gray all claimed they had a right to his estate. In his past, Coleman had also named his former manager, Marital, as his executor, meaning Marital was supposed to handle Coleman's estate after his death. However, a later will replaced Marital with Anna Gray as the person in charge. The confusion mainly came from Coleman's 2 different wills. A will he wrote in 1999 had named Marital as the executor and stated that Coleman wanted people with no financial interest in him to conduct his funeral. But in 2005, he created another will that changed this. The later will stated that there should be no funeral, wake, or ceremony of any kind for him after his death. This led to a disagreement, especially since several people still felt entitled to his estate.
Do we know if he left a will or not?
Well, that's a real bone of contention right now. There's some reporting out there that he left a will in which he does not name Shannon.
In addition, Coleman's ex-wife, Shannon Price, also claimed to be the rightful heir. Even though she and Coleman divorced in 2008, Price said they had reconciled and were living together as a common law couple at the time of his death. Common law marriage means that even if they were divorced on paper, they were living together in a way that resembled marriage. Price argued that this qualified her to inherit his assets. The case eventually went to court. Price's claim was weakened by some important facts that came to light during the investigation. For one, the will in which Coleman named Price as a beneficiary was handwritten, which raised questions. Also, even though they were living together, they were still legally separated. Additionally, there were allegations that Price had been abusive to Coleman, leading him to seek a protective order against her the same year he died. In the end, the court ruled against Price. Her claim was dismissed, and the judge decided that the only valid will was the 2005 one, which named Anna Gray as the rightful beneficiary. Gray had managed Coleman's business dealings and had run his company, which seemed to make her a suitable choice. Coleman's death and the dispute over his estate showed just how complicated things can get when there are mixed relationships, financial troubles, and unclear plans. The disposition of Coleman's ashes remains unknown. Price said that had she been granted disposition, she would have scattered the ashes at the Golden Spike National Historic Site in Utah as a tribute to Coleman's lifelong love of trains. Even though he was a well-known actor, Coleman's final years and even his death were surrounded by hardship, controversy, and legal battles that sadly became public.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about?
Although he was a great actor and could be truly funny, today Coleman is also held up as a cautionary tale about child actors. It is better that people remember him as Arnold Jackson than the troubled person he later became. With the role brought him huge success, and he won awards like the Young Artist Award and 3 People's Choice Awards. His popularity was so high that VH1 even named him the top child star in its list of the 100 greatest kid stars. Celebrities admired him too. For example, Lucille Ball, one of the biggest names in comedy, once said she loved watching Gary perform and found him hilarious. Beyond his famous TV role, Gary's life and struggles inspired other works. For example, a character based on him appeared in the Broadway musical Avenue Q, which poked fun at the challenges of growing up and realizing life isn't always easy. The character in the musical was created to represent the struggles many people face when they realize that adulthood isn't as simple as they once believed. Gary had thought about playing the role himself but never did, and later he even considered suing the show's creators for using his likeness. Although he didn't pursue the lawsuit, he mentioned wanting someone to take action on his behalf. After Gary passed away in 2010, many tributes were made to honor his memory. The Avenue Q cast dedicated shows to him, and people in the industry spoke warmly about his impact. His attorney, Randy Kester, said that Gary might have been small, but he made the world a happier place. In 2024, a documentary called Gary was released on Peacock, which looked into his life, career, and legacy.